Hi guys, it's Chris at the Ultimate Recycler. Now that I'm collecting e-waste in my shop, I'm getting all sorts of stuff, so not just electrical waste. And here's a good little example. This load coming the other day, guy was cleaning up his shed. He said, stuff's no good, gonna go to the tip, thought you might want it. That's fine, no worries. Electrical stuff is good. I take everything, I process it, I fix some stuff, I scrap things out for precious metal recovery, I send plastic to recyclers, keep it all at a landfill. But the bonus is that when people are cleaning up, they just want to ditch stuff. And this guy said, this is all going to the tip, you may as well have it. So I've got a whole timber box full of old cream jars. They're, I think they're mostly metric ones, so I can see 300ml on one. Some of the half pint ones are a little bit more desirable. They're not really collectible, but people buy them because they're sort of old school. I've sold milk bottles to people who are having weddings and they want a milk bottle on each table to put flowers in. All sorts of reasons, but they'll clean up well, they'll sell okay. The timber box is certainly well worth selling. But in this deal, the exciting thing is a vintage suitcase full of who knows what. Could be treasure, could be not. I don't know. I did have a quick peek when you dropped it off, and I'll show you how quick a look I had. I went like this. I said, yep, I'll take it. I just had to make sure there wasn't a dead cat in there or something gross. But the suitcase itself might wash up okay. It's probably a little bit far gone. But that's not important. He was going to throw it all out, and I love a good treasure hunt through an old suitcase or a box. It's been in the shed for many years, so have a look with me. We'll see what's in here. Okay, so I did see some wiring, which is why I first said yes, and I just basically closed the lid. This looks like an old coil antenna from a radio. There's electrical, Bakelite electrical fittings. This is seriously the first look I've had. That's obviously a part of a model plane engine, little gasoline engine. There's an old radio valve and a coil, so there's early electronics here. And that box, that little box is actually copper. So I'm going to tip this into a tray where we can look through it better. Oh, that could be a... I'm wondering if that's part of an early telephone. The mouthpiece, it's quite heavy. Certainly old. Alright, look at this. Wow. And that looks like a live round. I don't know, there's no mark in the no firing pin mark in the detonator. I don't know, I better be careful with that one. Certainly large. So this is a really cool little box slot. I love going through stuff like this. This looks like lead. It's probably, I think the old telephone system wiring was actually lead cased. Looks like there's wires in it. So an old transformer or something. Could be an audio transformer from an old radio. These little ring grip Bakelite plugs I always save because they sell quite well to people that restore radios and vintage electrical equipment. So the theme here is generally electrical. So I'm going to tip this out, go through it. I'll show you what I find. There's certainly scrap value, but there's certainly other value as well. So pretty cool. We'll sort through it shortly. Let's start tidying up this deal with the more mundane electrical bits. The old modem I will scrap out just for the board. I'll show you the board in a minute. The power pack, it's a 12-volt one, and I'll test it. It looks in good physical condition, so I'll test it, and if it's any good I'll put that in the shop. I sell them for $5 each, but eventually if I get too many I will just be scrapping them for the copper wire and the transformer. The old hot point electric radiator here, clearly it's got issues and I was missing. I only worry about testing and selling these heaters if they really look brand new. This one's clearly had some trauma, not safe in the wiring there, so that'll just be scrapped. I'll chop the cord off, and the rest of it is 90% just pressing steel, so that'll go in my steel bins. So totally recyclable, that one. This little lamp, I get a lot of these too. I sell them but only at about $5 each. This one's missing the glass up the top, so I'll scrap this. It's not worth fixing it just for $5. cut the wire off it. There's a big heavy transformer in the base. It'll go in my transformer bin. So that deals with that. This is an old spray wand, I guess. It was from a backpack sprayer. It's too far gone to actually try and sell, and I won't keep it for matching up with a spray unit. It'll be brass, so I'll just scrap that for the brass metal. This just looks like a homemade towel rail, nothing special, nice and vintage, but you know what, I'd probably get $5 for that. Someone with a country kitchen type decor would like that. I think you could just about put paper towel or something on it in your kitchen, so I'll give that a wash up and I'll probably get $5 for that. Alright, I'll go and wash these cream bottles up next. And the only other thing electrically was this sewing machine. It was probably a very good one in its day, but the guy did tell me this stuff was no good, so I don't know what issues it's got. We'll probably put it on the tester and see what it does. It might be worthwhile selling parts off it, so we'll check that a little bit before we scrap it out. Let's run through these items again quickly. I scrapped the modem, just took the board out. It sells a mid-grade board, not a lot of weight, it's only 200 grams. Mid-grade boards are only about $1.50 a kilo, so that's only about 30 cents. Certainly don't do it for these, it's just a little bit of a bonus to scrap these out. The plastic's nice and clean, they can go in the recycle bin. The power supply tested well, no problems at all. Works perfectly fine and it's safe, so I'll put $5 on that in the shop. The heater, I did pull the heater apart, got a fair lump of copper wire. There was an electric motor in it for a fan. The end panels are nice clean plastic. I'll put them in the recycle bin, and the rest of it's just pressing steel, as I mentioned. So that's all flattened and that can go for scrap next time I'm doing a load down there. So not much value in that. Now this is different. This lamp, I mentioned that I get a lot of them. Rather than scrapping this one, I've converted it. It's a bit of an upcycle project. I took the heavy transformer out of the base and put something heavier in the base because the transformer wasn't quite heavy enough. There's the transformer, by the way. And I got a bracket for a mobile phone. Now, Christine was using one of these, which she purchased for doing filming for her sewing projects and other things and her cooking. And these little tripods, you can get them off eBay. They're pretty good, but she wanted to do filming from above. And unless you dangle this thing off the top of a door or something, and it's really awkward to use that to film with. So, because this little light has swivels, top and bottom, and it also happens to be telescopic, I thought we might as well make use of those pivoting joints. And all I did at the top was put a little piece of aluminium tube across there. I took the light fitting and everything out, I screwed the piece of aluminium tube across there, found a little G clamp, and here's another one I had, drilled a hole through one side, and this top bracket unscrews, so I screwed it through the G clamp, put a spring in there so that it firms it up a bit so it can pivot, and now we have a beautiful mobile phone holder for filming, for above your work or on any angle you like. In fact, I used one of these the other day when I was doing something, because you can bend this right up and pretty well any angle you want, and it worked really well. So there you go. I've repurposed this lamp, really took the guts out of it and just used the telescopic part and the heavy base, and that's going to work great. So there you go. No need to throw that in the bin. As far as the weight goes, I used a couple of these old cast iron weights in the base. They're a bit heavy in the transformer. The transformer will go in the scrap bins for, they actually pay for transformers, about 50 cents a kilo. And if we weigh that, just to give you an idea of the value, it weighs nearly half a kilo, so 25 cents worth of scrap. It's amazing how quickly they add up. The copper wire off the lamp, if we put this with the copper wire from the heater, think that weighs out at about, what's that, 270, so not far off a third of a kilo, and that pays a bit over $2, so it's at about 60 cents worth of copper wire. The electric motor here out of the fan also adds up to a bit of weight, so we'll get some scrap value. But look, these deals for me are much more exciting for what I can resell or what I can upcycle and use. We'll have a look at the other things. One more scrap item before I go on the other saleable stuff. This was that spray pump wand thing. I chopped it up. I took the little steel brackets off and the timber handles, so it's now pure brass. To give you an idea of values, that weighs pretty much spot on half a kilo, and brass was paying around about $4.50 to $5 a kilo, so you know, $2.50 there, that's all right, it adds up. Now this old suitcase, I've tipped the stuff out and we'll go through those treasures in a tick, but I washed it up and all I did was gave it a spray of clear lacquer, and yeah, it's not super clean inside, it's got a little bit of damage, but it's got a lot of character now. I reckon it looks awesome, and it's nice and clean. The clear lacquer kind of gives it a bit of a gloss. It kind of hides the grubby patches a bit. It makes it clean to touch because it sealed it. And all the rusty bits, I didn't scrub these. I just washed it down so that there was no loose sort of a shale on it, no rusty flaky bits. And then the locks don't work, they're seized up, but who cares? I reckon it looks great. The clear lacquer just gives a really nice rustic look. So even though it's a bit battered, bit of a tear in the top there, it's still quite solid, but I'm going to put $10 on that, no problems at all, in the shop. I think that'll sell really quickly. Great decorator item. Now the other thing of value, all these jars, all the cream jars. Quite a few of them were actually half pint ones. There were some 300ml metric ones as well, and there was one, where is it, this one's a half pint as well, but it's the older style. So I'm going to ask about $3 each for these, and I think there was about 16 of them, so almost $50. So that suddenly we're talking a few dollars, aren't we? Much better than scrap, and they'll sell well, they'll look great in the shop. And the box I washed up as well. I pulled that big nail out of one end, and I just put a couple of nails into one little loose board, and that box is easy a $10 item as well. So this deal is going to end up to be a fair bit of value. I'll do a list at the end so you've got an idea. Also, I washed up this little hand tail rail. I reckon I'll get $5 for that as well, as I mentioned earlier. And then our box of interesting treasures. I'll spread these out and we'll have a look at them. Okay, just before we get to that suitcase full of treasures, or at least all the treasures that were in the suitcase, I know you're waiting for them. We just got to check out this sewing machine. It's the only other thing from this deal that we had to check, and it looks really good. It's a good brand, Janome. It's nice and neat, undamaged. It probably would have been a very expensive machine in its day, as I think I mentioned earlier. There's little section in here with some accessories, and I did notice around this side there's another compartment with some bits and pieces. So I don't know what's wrong. The guy said it's all rubbish, so it must have a fault perhaps. Anyway, I said we'll plug it in and see. So I've got it plugged into my mini pat tester, and we need to find an earth somewhere. I think probably up here is the easiest spot to access an earth. So we'll turn her on and see what happens. Okay, we have fail on the earth. It's not focusing very well, sorry, there we go. Okay, we can't get an earth, that's not a good sign. It does pass on the class 1 and class 2 sections, and it's a class 1 item, I presume. It's got an earth pin. So, alright, well, we'll turn it on and see what's going to happen. Okay. Nothing, no lights. Nothing going on. Alright, let's try the pedal. No, totally dead. Alright, so something's gone on. We'll investigate that. If the machine was a bit ratty and dirty and had some issues, I wouldn't worry, I'd scrap it. But seeing so it's so clean, we'll do some checking and just see if we can find out what's wrong. It might be just a fuse or a bad wire, or we'll have to check out the earth problem anyway. Okay, we'll start at the beginning. We'll see if we've got power at the input plug. The mains comes in on this side. These two are the mains, and then the three there go out to the motor controller. So I'll set my meter for AC voltage. We'll provide some power, and let's see if we have an input voltage across the active and neutral. And there we go. If you can see my meter, it's up to 234 volts AC, which is fine. We're on a 240 volt mains supply here in Australia, so there's no issues with the plug. And incidentally, there's no earth wire there, so this sewing machine's actually double insulated, so there's no problems. My tester showing an earth fail isn't an issue because there is no earth wire. Anyway, we know it's good to the plug. We'll investigate the machine now and look for a fuse. Alright, it was only 2 screws to remove the end cover, and we can see there's a fuse here. So we'll access that and see if that's okay. And don't think that one's any good. Alright, I found another fuse. I did test that one and it was no good. I've got another one here, exactly the same rating, 1.6 amps. It's critical to do that. You should never ever put a higher rated fuse in. You could put a slightly lower one in, but the problem is it's going to blow easier. So we've got this new fuse in now. We'll power the machine up, and we'll turn it on here and see if anything happens. Oh, okay, little noise there. Sounded like a solenoid or something. And oh, look at this, yep. Little red light, we have power. There is life in the old girl. Alright, well, I'll put my hand on the motor controller and see if she runs. Oh, look at that, beautiful. Nice smooth mechanism. I think this is a pretty good quality machine. But as I know nothing about sewing, in fact, I'm now demonstrating my total experience at sewing. I still call this foot pedal an accelerator, so that tells you I'm not a sewer, but luckily Christine is, so I'll put the cover back on. I'll give this machine to her to have a play with. She used to sell Janome sewing machines, so there's a chance that if she likes this model, I'll never see it again. But anyway, it runs now. It could well be a good one. It might be worth a bit to resell, or Christine might get a spare for her sewing room. But anyway, good, we've fixed it. Just blew a fuse. Who knows why? Might have been a power surge. The machine might have been worked very hard one particular day, and the conditions might have meant it drew a bit more current than it normally does. Anyway, it's working fine now. It sounds really smooth. I'll give it to Christine and she'll give it a test. So Christine's checked out this machine. Here she is making some really flash bags, and the machine's running beautifully. We did have to replace the light globe, but everything else is going really good. These bags are coming out really cool. I'll put a link on the top now if you want to check out her bags. Made out of salvaged upholstery fabric.
And I'm keeping this machine.
And she's keeping the machine. I'll never see it again. And oh look, cheese. I've been distracted. Okay, I know you've been waiting for it. Here's the contents of the suitcase. I've roughly sorted it, but I'll go through it with you and show you what we found. Where we start? Up this end. Alright, I've sorted this pile here. They're basically old Bakelite electrical fittings, of which I'll keep them because I do use them. These switches actually sell quite well. I've got a whole box full of covers for those. I've mentioned earlier that I save these ring grip plugs. There's some other fittings here that I just put them in a box, and sooner or later I'm after a bit. If I get too many, I do a box lot in the shop and they sell okay. There was some alligator clamps, and I throw them in an assorted box every now and again and get $5 for them, so probably 10 or so sell quite well. This little bit I recognise from the side of a hand crank drill, and I often get those, and sometimes they're missing that knob, so I'll put that aside. I'll use it one day. A couple of drill bits, I throw them in a jar. I sell a jar full of drill bits for $5. That's a piece of plumber's solder. It's not big enough to be that useful. I'll probably put that in a bucket I have full of solder and it'll go for scrap. It's mostly lead and tin, I think solder is. This little bit here was a piece of brass, nickel plated brass or something, so that's just in the scrap bin. This little assortment was just bits of steel, all ferrous items. Nothing really useful there, so that'll just go in my steel bin. The lead coated wire, there's about a kilogram of lead there. Next time I've got my fire going down the back, I'll just melt that into a little ingot. Not sure what the price of lead is at the moment, but it's probably about $1 worth there. A whole assortment of old radio parts. Now, this was quite interesting. It looks like they were home hobby projects. Someone's perhaps made a crystal set or something, and that's all that's left of the box. There's old transformers, there's a couple of switches. I do have jars for switches and I sell them. There's little indicator lights. That's a terminal, there's a few different terminals. Potentiometers or volume controls. There's some old headphone jacks. So I could do a box lot of this. It's probably easier than trying to sell individual items. The transformers may or may not be any good. If they're no good to sell as old radio parts, they're worth about 50 cents a kilo for scrap, and they are very heavy, so there could be about $1 worth. Maybe not quite, but yeah, certainly worthwhile for scrap. But being vintage, they're probably fairly easy to test, and a standard ohms meter will test them, and they may well be useful, so I'll leave them in this assortment. This little copper box, it's not really worth pulling apart just for the copper because it doesn't weigh a lot, but it adds a nice component to that selection of radio parts. So I'm going to put that whole lot in the shop for $10 a lot. Anyone that's into vintage electronics may well be interested. Now, this is a bit of an assortment here. There was, I believe this was a part of a military earphones system. I've had these before. It's only got the one earpiece, and I didn't see any Department of Defence arrows on it, but I'd say it dates World War II era. And there's some other bits. I'm not really sure what this bit is. It kind of looks familiar. May have been off an early telephone or something. And I think that's a telephone one. In fact, I think that's the old style that used to hang on the side of your old, like a Ericsson phone, something like that. I might do a bit of checking on it. It is marked PNG, which in Australia is Postmaster General's Office. That was before telecom came into existence, I believe. That's a slightly more modern telephone, either earpiece or the microphone. So I may group all those together and just put a $10 box lot for anyone that's into vintage communications equipment. But I might do a bit more searching on this one. It might have some value. And that's some sort of electronics piece again. I'm not totally sure. These bits are clearly off a musical instrument, possibly off the guitar or something. Don't know much about musical instruments. Might try them at $5 a lot in the shop and see what happens. I suspect this is part of an old shaver. I'm not totally sure, but because it's all broken up, that'll just go in the electric motor scrap bin. These, I did a little bit of checking on these Frog 150s, model plane engines. I think they were diesel from what I read. And these ones are all just relatively incomplete. Two have got the props, one's just like just the crankcase. There was a little piece I found somewhere that I thought was the piston. I don't know where that's gone. A nice little fuel tank's beautifully made, all hand soldered. So I found one of these engines on eBay, made about $50. There was a couple of others with bids, but they were complete. So I'll put that group lot on for $10 a lot. I'll probably in the shop is easier, but I could try and eBay them. I think this went with them. Speed check. It's from a hobby shop, so I guess that's to do with remote control planes. So that was interesting, and that's possibly the control handle for it. So that can all go together. This other beauty, which we saw earlier, I did a bit of checking on this. It's a .50 caliber bullet, and the red tip, I'll put it somewhere where I can focus. The red tip indicates it was a tracer bullet, and the markings on the bottom, FA was Frankfurt Arsenal in Pennsylvania, and 41 is the year, so it's 1941, which is World War II. And I believe these caliber bullets were used in machine guns, possibly aircraft. A Browning M2 machine gun I found, and the red tip, yes, indicates it was a tracer bullet. So that's really interesting. Now don't panic, I did check it, and the bullet was actually loose and it just fell out with a bit of a wobble, and the case is empty, so it's perfectly safe. The primer doesn't look like it's been struck, so if I was to put it in a vise and hit it with a little pin punch, it might go bang. I'm not going to try it, but as far as handling it goes, it's perfectly safe. So that'll have good market to a collector. Not sure what it's worth. Possibly I'd try $20, $25 on it in the shop. So I reckon that'll sell quite well. This little box here had some other interesting bits. There's a Rising Sun badge, which could be World War I or World War II. The crown apparently was the same shape over those years. It changed in the 50s. This is I think it's a lapel badge. It's too small for a hat badge, but that's got to be a $10 item. Some other bits and pieces in here. Keys, I throw keys in a jar, and I just sell jars full of old keys. I might keep the little one because it possibly suits a little deed box. Just a bit of other hardware. That piece is actually brass, chromed brass, and I'm going to keep it because it might actually be a good thread to suit me when I'm making lamps. Another hardware there, that can all just go in a jar for bits and pieces, and I sell those again. This piece, I spent probably an hour looking for something like this when I was doing a lamp project the other day, and I thought I had some and I couldn't find them. But okay, now I've got one when I don't need it. It's one of Murphy's laws, I guess, isn't it? Scanning along, we found this little writing set. It's German made. So a little compass, actually 3 compasses. That was all that was in the box. It's a timber box, but really nice little set there. The box isn't the best, but the implements are quite okay, or instruments I should say. I reckon $10 on the set there, and that's about it. So it was good fun going through that. And you know, there's scrap metal here, there's parts for my shed for, you know, just keeping in case I need them one day. There's good saleable group lots, and out of the whole lot, this was all I'm actually going to throw out. Just a little bit of fluff, and there's a broken Bakelite something or other, and a little piece of plastic, and a bit of a paper gasket, a little bit of tape. So out of this entire deal that the guy was going to throw to the tip, that's all I'm actually going to put in my bin. Alright, I did threaten you guys with my notepad, so let's have a look through what we've got value wise. Here's the scrap items. Circuit board wasn't much, it was just the one, some insulated copper wire, transformers, motors, lead, piece of solder, a little bit of pressing steel, and there was a couple of dollars worth of brass. Not a lot of value there. It does add up, and I do like scrapping things out, it's quite enjoyable. I've estimated about $8 there. The figure really doesn't matter, because with collecting e-waste, I make most of my money out of stuff that can be fixed and sold, or else selling parts. And the e-waste, the scrap metal side of things, is really just a bit of a bonus. But it is fun to do. Alright, so here's the main list of what we could sell. Prices are pretty much as I mentioned in the video. The cream jars, there was 19 of them. I've already sold the whole lot, and I've sold the box. The other stuff's really interesting things for the shop, and I'm sure they'll sell well. The tracer bullet was probably my favourite little find. I put 25 on that. The Rising Sun badge was pretty cool. I like having army stuff in the shop. I've allowed $8 there for the scrap, so $175, pretty easy return from a pile of stuff that was basically destined for landfill otherwise. And then adding to that, we've also got the lamp base that I upcycled as a mobile phone holder. That's kind of handy. The Janome sewing machine, probably the most valuable item in the lot once we got it going. Who knows what that's worth. We did find one on eBay for $500, but I doubt it will sell. I think someone's just dreaming a bit there. But it's a quality machine and Christine loves it. Then there's a whole heap of assorted hardware. You know, I get to pick out Bakelite bits and nuts and bolts and various things that I know I'll use. And that's invaluable, having a good stock of that stuff. So add those things in and you've suddenly got, you know, quite a few $100 return from, as I said, stuff that was destined to for landfill. So I'm pretty happy with that. On top of everything, it's great fun sorting through. I love the whole process of it all, and keeping stuff in circulation rather than it being thrown out. So that's pretty cool. The guy that dropped this off is a local bloke, and I'll actually put a bit of cash in an envelope for him as a nice little surprise. He certainly won't be expecting that, and I like to do that. It's good karma, and it encourages people to bring more stuff past my door rather than heading straight out to the transfer station. So there you go. It just goes to show that when people are cleaning out their shed, one person's trash is someone else's treasure. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.